Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending. My name is Shaimaa Tantawy, and today I'm presenting my master's thesis titled The Parallel City, Linking Formal with Informal, the Case of Cairo, Egypt. The thesis is exploring ways of bridging the gap between the informal and formal in the developing world, with a particular focus on African cities. Countries around the world, especially in Africa, are urbanizing rapidly than ever, as more people continue to migrate from rural to the cities. Today, more than half the world's population resides in urban areas. More than 90% of this urban growth is taking place in the developing world. Many scholars have argued that the increasing development of informal settlements would be the dominant form of urbanization in most developing countries. Given that there are no or little recognition to these areas, according to the UN Habitat Report in 2010, and as shown in the map, the worldwide population of informal settlements is expected to grow to reach levels of where 2 in 1 person will be living in informal areas by the year 2050. Informal areas are a reality that many developing countries have to cope with, and ignoring it will never be the answer. Despite all efforts, radical or not, to contain their growth, informal areas are steadily growing in faster speeds each year. This thesis will provide a holistic understanding of these settlements by employing an iterative analytical approach, shifting between quantitative and qualitative data. The objective is to provide a sustainable livelihood through the implementation of 3 consecutive stages: upgrading accessibility, redevelopment and urban renewal, and finally anticipating the growth of the settlement. Each step paved the way for the next one to enter. First, the upgrading is concerned with reconnecting the neighborhood by providing a proper street network and transportation services, servicing the neighborhood with the basic infrastructure needed like water supply and power, and lastly is the improving of open public spaces. This will lead to healthier living conditions, increased security and safety levels, and allow for businesses to thrive. Second is the redevelopment, concerned with consolidate existing economic market and encourage the increase of entrepreneurship programs, which will lead to increasing job opportunities for women and youth, increase income levels, and eliminate violence among youth. The last stage is growth, concerned with urban renewal of existing built form, and looking at better ways to formalize areas that are earmarked for future growth. All these stages have to be supported with necessary housing, planning, and economical policies that are citizenship participation policy, income support strategy, affordable housing strategy, and labor market strategy. Moving on to the case study, it has a population of almost 87 million with density of 83 capita per square kilometer and a growth rate of 1.84%. Cairo is part of the Great Cairo region, GCR, located in the northern Egypt, with an area of 4,900 square kilometers and density of 6,000 people per square kilometer. For the purpose of the research, it was essential to look at Cairo as a whole and unreveal the different layers of the city: formal, informal, agriculture-edge, and desert-edge. Cairo alone has a share of 12 million persons with a growth rate of 2.39% and a density of nearly 19,000 persons per square kilometer. 62% of this population resides in informal settlements. Cairo has several informal settlements that are considered as the largest in the Middle East. I have mapped out the largest and well-known ones in order to understand how my site is perceived. These areas host many small industries and productive activities that are interrelated to the formal economy in the city. Scholars have argued that if the dead capital of informal houses and businesses were formalized through land titling and housing and businesses registration, it could raise the value of such assets and could be used in ways that increase the investment potential for owners, hence contributes to the poverty alleviation. According to Sims in 2003, there are 3 necessary parameters in the categorization of informal area typologies, where, presented in blue, concerned about the location of those settlements, urban pattern and plot size; what, presented in red, describe the informal areas in terms of material used, housing construction process, and infrastructure provided; and who, presented in green, describes the dwellers in terms of education level, skills, and the dominant income source. Based on these parameters, there are 4 typologies in Cairo. Informal settlements on former agricultural land, which is characterized with an irrigation pattern lot. It has infrastructure, but it is illegal. Informal settlements on former desert land, which is characterized with incremental subdivision pattern. It has limited to no infrastructure, and it's also illegal state. Deteriorated historic core that is characterized with old buildings and medieval urban fabric, generally deteriorated buildings, and it ranges from legal to illegal situation. And deteriorated urban pockets, which is characterized with dilapidated story structures, very precarious typing of housing, and it hosts extremely poor families. And this map shows where each typology is located, where the most dominant one is the informal settlement on former agricultural land. Moving on to the focus, NASSER, also known as Garbage City, can be defined as informal area on former desert state land and distinguished by private residential buildings constructed on vacant state land by citizens under the process of hand claim or squatting. It is located at the foothill of Al-Muqattam, which means that the settlement is vulnerable to rock slides. The area of the site is about 5.5 square kilometer, and the population of 850,000. The area is well known as the main point where all the daily tonnage of the garbage is to be sorted and recycled. However, not all residents work as garbage collectors. MANSHIET NASSER is one of the oldest settlements in Cairo, and given its long history, the build form is significantly different. I identified few of them. Zibeline settlement, or garbage collector settlement, has a less dense fabric that is for the purpose of garbage sorting and pig grazing activity. In the areas where no garbage sorting takes place, the structure is much more denser and much less open spaces following a linear structure deep into the settlement. And there are some areas that look very formalized, and these areas were the emergency housing that was built to foster families who were affected by rock slide. The settlement has also a touristic significance, as it is the home for a very well-known cathedral called the Monastery of St. Simon, which is considered as the largest cathedral in the Middle East. It also has one of the oldest mosques in the area, dated to 1362 AD. MANSHIET NASSER has been the focus for numerous NGOs from around the world, given the important role it plays in the informal economy sector of Cairo as a whole. A lot of these NGOs have done remarkable work in enhancing the awareness of the inhabitants that played a major role in preventing the area from turning into a dangerous and unsafe zone, unlike several informal settlements in Cairo. This diagram explained the SWOT analysis for this settlement. To give an example, for the strengths, the community is very well organized and self-sustaining, and most of its dwellers are very skilled. For weaknesses, the community is completely neglected by their government. For the opportunities, using the human capital as a main pole in the upgrading process, and as for the threats, it is the geographical condition and the vulnerability to potential rock slides. My vision for Garbage City can be summarized as follows: providing a sustainable livelihood for the settlement dwellers and enhance its image in order to create a welcoming and inviting neighborhood, proposing a better way to handle the growing density of unplanned areas, and to spread awareness on how urban design can empower communities. A strategic plan was diagrammed to demonstrate how this vision can be achieved. To give an example, some of the major steps are enhancing infrastructure accessibility, focusing on water, power, sewage, gas, and transportation by widening the main routes within the settlement. Proposing a formalized, adaptable way for the settlement to grow and fill in the in-between spaces. And proposing incremental housing typology that adapts to changing needs. Proposing several points to be main access points to transit stations and car parking, mainly using tuk-tuks as the main transit mode within the settlements due to the narrowness of the streets, and it also provides job opportunities for the youth. I've also mapped out and color-coded who could be the main characters involved to implement such plan. To better explain the challenges I'm addressing and how the dwellers will benefit from the vision, I created the storyboard, which tells the story of an average dweller who is living a problematic situation on a daily basis, as he coexists with the garbage for a number of reasons. To name a few: lack of basic infrastructure, inadequate housing, under constant risk of evacuation. And some of the benefits that can be achieved by realizing this vision are enhancing the living conditions of residents, providing a better opportunity to reconnect with the formal part of the city, extending the infrastructure into the settlement. By zooming into the focused area of the The area is called Zeppelin Settlement, or in English, Garbagemen Settlement. This area is the oldest neighborhood in the Garbage City. The area includes several urban activities such as schools, hospitals, churches, mosques, etc., but all are in deteriorated state, excluding few of them. Garbage men do not live from garbage collection, but from recycling and reselling it. 90% of their income is related to the recycling process. In times before the swine flu, up to 60% of their total income was earned from selling the pigs. The microeconomies around garbage collection in Cairo give jobs to almost 40,000 people. The bottom graph shows the garbage composition and how it differs based on the income level, high, mid, and low. The other two graphs shows garbage collection and recycling facts, comparing the government activity to the Zeppelin activity. The settlement was occupied by the Wahia, or the people from the oasis, who came to Cairo in 1890s. In order to earn money, they started to collect waste, mainly organic waste and paper. A huge and organized network developed, in which every family had their own route to collect the garbage. The routes existed of single houses, which were spread over the whole city. They were handed over from father to son. With time, the Wahia established themselves, and so they rented out their garbage routes more and more to the garbage collectors, who came from the countryside in search for better living conditions. A present typical house plan would consist of sorting area, barn, 2 rooms, and a room with a washroom separated by a half wall from the kitchen. In order to understand or to decide on how to best intervene to reinforce my design, I looked at the lowest level on how people live and react in their community. I diagrammed a day in a life story of an average family of 4. This starts with the father and son starting their journey early morning using their everyday routes, going from house to house, collecting the garbage. There is no a set-up schedule, nor a preferred garbage bag. This service has no set fees as they are not employed by the government, and people may pay them whatever they believe is fair. By the time father and son are back, the mother and daughter start the garbage sorting process. After this process is over, the father and son take the sorted garbage for reselling and recycling. The management plan of the informal settlement in Cairo is a typical top-down management, starting with the president and descends to the lowest scale of a village and a city council. Given the amount of corruption caused of the centralized regime, the fund that is originally put aside for these settlements, by the time it reaches the bottom scale, its value has been severely depreciated. The new thing that was introduced recently is a new Ministry of Informal Settlement, which I personally think is a one step forward to reconnect with them. The main player in this management plan is the NGOs, as they are the only ones who have gained their trust through major efforts of reconnecting and upgrading. However, I have to say that recently the government has started to take some serious steps towards the improvement and enhancement of the quality of life to these settlements. The proposed management plan is significantly different, where it proposes a decentralized regime where local governance is more empowered and independent with its own funding. It allows for democracy to spread, voices to be heard, and corruption to be limited. It also introduces the new entity of MANSHIET NASSER Council, the sole connection to the government that will be responsible of reassuring that all residents have adequate housing and proper infrastructure service. It will also monitor the progress of the design process, providing other community services such as employment and childcare. I also added the new consultation service provided by University and Urban Study Council, in addition to the donation made by prominent businessmen and trades who already have established an ongoing economic activity with the dwellers. By going back to the vision, I did a phasing plan of how I imagine the design process will be implemented. Starting with the current situation, the first phase will be the street widening, which will be the bedding for the urban spines and will allow for the infrastructure to access the settlement. The second phase will be the infrastructure extension. The third phase is the urban renewal. This phase is concerned with renovating the built form of urban spines to enhance the image of the settlement and enlighten the community with better housing and quality of life. The fourth phase is transit and community, which is concerned with providing 2 community centers, providing a main transit station for buses, tuk-tuks, and enhancing the garbage collection and sorting process by providing a recycling depot. The last phase is about creating a green network of open space which will allow for the economic network to grow deeper within the community, and also adding a buffer zone to mark the buildable areas that are vulnerable to rock slides. The first three phases are done incrementally and simultaneously, meaning that in each stage the area will be evacuated and residents will be temporarily relocated to empty lots marked in green. They will be provided with temporary container housing that can fit a family with 6 members, and it is possible to combine more than one container housing together in case of extended families. Each container house will have an outdoor area for the family to perform their garbage sorting and other daily activities. It also includes a small room that contains basic amenities such as washrooms, kitchen, power generator, gas tank, and a water tank, all of which are refueled every now and then. After the completion and success of each stage, the next stage will be implemented. The locations of the stages are strategically chosen according to its importance in implementing the bigger vision. And based on the success of this process, it can be extended to include the rest of the community. This is the larger scale of a design layout. I have mainly focused on designing the 2 urban spines, which will be the cornerstone for the vision to spread within the whole settlement. It includes the consolidated market of recycled materials, handmade products, and other supporting economic activities. The darker buildings are the existing ones, and the white buildings are the renovated ones. I mainly use the courtyard typology as it is the most preferred typology in this community, given that they need courtyards for raising their birds and to perform other community activities. These buildings are mixed-use developments, residential on typical floor and a commercial on the ground floor. There are 2 community centers built on the 2 ends of the urban spine to mark the gateways to the community, and they are built over empty lots. The one at the south end is the proposed site for the headquarters of the community MANSHIET NASSER Council, which will be the sole connection to the government and responsible for looking after all the community needs and activities, maintaining and monitoring the vision, implementation, and progress. The complex located in the northwest is called the Recycling Depot. It is where all activities related to the garbage collection, sorting, and recycling happen. There will also be a main transit station. It has a parking garages and stations for buses and tuk-tuks. It also includes a governmental infrastructure and amenities organization that will be responsible of the infrastructure services within the community. In addition to that, there are 2 other areas proposed for 2 new housing typologies, which will be discussed in coming slides. So, by placing the design back to the larger settlement and the larger vision, you can see that it complies with the main moves discussed earlier, and it also shows the compatibility of expanding it to include the wider scale of this settlement. So going back to the daily life story, this is my proposed scenario of how I imagine the daily life activity of the same family could be after the design implementation. In this scenario, I'm proposing an official agreement to take place between the government and the Zeppelin community to legalize the garbage collection and provide them with the right tools. This scenario proposes the garbage collection will be done using garbage trucks provided by the government. They will be still using the usual routes going from house to house, and the collection will be categorized according to the income level. Once the collection is done, the trucks will return to the recycling depot for unloading and sorting. The sorting process is still done manually. However, in this scenario, workers will be using the right equipment and tools to ensure safety. So I wanted to actually apply the proposed day-in-a-life route on the layout to show how long each journey or each trip would be. In here, I'm proposing there would be 2 different locations. By measuring the walking distances, they range from 100 to 600 meters, as the settlement is 1.5 kilometer in length and 700 meter in width, which means that all necessary services and activities are within a walking distance within the settlement. Other layout studies were also diagrammed in order to understand and demonstrate the different aspects of the vision, such as accessibility, a comprehensive green and economic network, and a lighting strategy to provide safety and security, where I'm proposing the usage of street lighting powered by solar energy to reduce power consumption. As for the green network, I'm proposing to use Xeriscaping as it does not require a lot of maintenance and helps to make water available for other domestic community uses. My first design detail is the recycling depot. The complex includes main management office, recycling workshops, DIY workshops, garages for garbage trucks, sorting areas, tuk-tuk and car parking, and a wholesale market, as well as retail and food courts. My next detail is the CMNC headquarters. It includes a complex of different NGOs, offices, retail stores, workshops, education facility, daycare and nurseries, grocery and food markets, a medical center with outpatient clinics, and an athletic center with leisure and recreation area for special events. Some of the duties that are performed by the CMNC is the rotating fund. The idea is to provide microloans to help entrepreneurs to start their businesses and help them develop business plans. After the entrepreneur is granted the loan, he is obligated to submit an annual report to demonstrate his revenues to help determine tax application. I have hypothetically set out an equivalent amount of $1,000 as monthly income to be a benchmark for tax application. According to these reports, percentages of payments are set out by a financial advisor, where 25% goes towards paying off the debt, another 25% in the case of landowners goes to a private account under the children's names, and in the case of tenants, it goes to a private account under his or her name to eventually buy the house or land. The rest of the 50% goes to his or her daily life costs. These percentages are subjective to change according to needs, requirement, and family size. Another duty is to encourage the residents to keep their community clean by offering a free bus token for each garbage bag they collect. My first housing typology is the infra wall. It is a flexible strategy that encourages diversity in housing and differentiation in public spaces. The main element of this strategy is a wall that contains the basic amenities and infrastructure necessary for a house: a washroom, kitchen, entrance, windows, and stairs. Other walls only have the necessary provisions for the infrastructure without the actual rooms, which gives more flexibility for the dwellers. The rooms are self-built and it can grow horizontally or vertically. The wall features and spaces vary depending on the proportions of the street. This diagram is showing the standard sizes of rooms and how they can be combined together to get either a house or a studio. The first plan is the original model, which has only a single bedroom and a living area. And the rest of the plan shows the evolvement process of the living unit. As an urban design tool, the infra wall creates an urban plan with two facades. A formal front elevation turns towards the streets and a back that is characteristically informal. From an environmental perspective, I added solar panels on the rooftops that are used for heating water, given that hot water is considered a privilege in these areas. These solar panels are made from recycled material. The second typology is the eco wall, which is a typology that requires a more sophisticated skills. This typology allows for the ecological aspect to be firstly introduced in the community. It is a facade that can be attached to any typical courtyard housing. This wall has different panels of green, solar, translucent, and open panels. The solar panels is for water heating, the green panels is for enhancing biodiversity, the translucent panels to provide lighting, and the opened panels are for visual and ventilation purposes. The floor plan consists of a single loaded hallway with a public terrace on one side and a private terrace on the other, which allow for better cross-ventilation. The rooftops has small-scale learning facilities and workshops for housewives who cannot afford to leave home. These are key illustrative sections to show a prototype of a main street with a 6 to 8 meter width and a secondary alley with a 3 meter width. In terms of zoning, the design is mainly consisting of mixed-use typology, forming a percentage of 22%. The rest is divided on different programs like residential, commercial, medical, and educational. There is also a 15% of open space. This slide shows how the design sits within context and boundaries. And finally, these are some street-level perspective shots of the urban spine and a typical communal space. This marks the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening.